The third and final days of Stage 2's third week promised to have plenty of exciting and entertaining matches that even at this early stage held the potential for affecting the stage playoff picture in just a couple of weeks, with some of the results throwing up some unexpected surprises. So let's discuss what went on before seeing how my predictions fared as this week concluded. The first game of Day 3 saw the London Spitfire take on the Boston Uprising, with London gradually improving whilst Boston came in off the back of numerous 5-map series that had been going well until the Hangzhou game last week. I thought this would be quite a competitive series, but this expectation quickly disappeared on Busan, with Spitfire's tank line leading the charge as they dominated the first map with Gesture, Prophet and Fury, consistently getting the better of Fusion's Culhex and RCK, as London comfortably took map 1. Moving into Paris, both sides struggled defending the point A, before regrouping on B to take a little more time off the clock, despite both sides eventually finishing the map in part thanks to some solid Winston primals from the main tanks. But once again it felt like London were in control, and after a great hold on the first point that took advantage of Boston's uncoordinated attack, Badosan, who owned the duel against AimGod, led the assault as the Spitfire captured their objective and took a 2-0 lead into the half. Boston, having gained a reputation for reverse sweeps, looked to do the same here as they completed King's Row in a good time, but once again London stopped them from gaining any foothold by finishing in a slightly faster time. The second attacks in overtime pitted the Sombra Goats of the Uprising against the traditional Goats of the Spitfire, with the latter first impressively almost completing the map second time round, but this was also matched by Boston before a devastating shatter from Gesture was finally enough to win the teamfight they needed to win the map and secure the series at 3-0. Moving on to the final map, Junkertown, it appeared that Boston were completely dejected, as they only managed to stop the Spitfire before struggling to find any success on their own attack, to be held at the first section of the map, as the match finished 4-0 in London's favour. This was another setback for Boston, who've been stumbling these past 2 weeks, but for London it firmly re-establishes themselves as a top team in the league this stage, as they look to effectively defend their inaugural season crown. The Shanghai Dragons, following their impressive victory over Chengdu last week, faced the Florida Mayhem, who were still struggling to find success after their move to an all-Korean roster. Again, and unsurprisingly, it was the same old story for Florida, who despite putting up a little bit of a fight against their opponents, and even took the first round of Lijiang after an effective Sombra performance from BQB, in the face of an experimental Bastion setup from Shanghai. But from here on, the Dragons dominated on the back of Ding's Farah and Gamsu's Ryan, as they convincingly won both other rounds to take the first map. As with most Mayhem games, they managed to pick up at least one map, and this was on Hanamura, where Swan managed to for once succeed with his over-aggressive playstyle, and utilise the superior time bank generated over the slower triple DPS pushes of the Dragons, to better Shanghai's second attack, and tie the series at the half. From here on, however, the series mainly revolved around the Sombra Goats of the Dragons, against the traditional Goats of the Mayhem, and with this, all the competitiveness of the series dissipated, with Shanghai dominating the matchup, with Gamsu annihilating Swan in the Rhine duel, whilst Florida could find little to no answer to Ding, who had a field day on Sombra. The Dragons completed both maps in very strong times, before holding Florida at the beginning of both Eichenwald and Rialto to secure the 3-1 series win and continue their great run of momentum and inflict further pain onto the Mayhem, whose org is continuing to poetically mirror their name. Game 3 of this third day saw the Dallas Fuel versus the Seoul Dynasty in what was widely expected to be a very close series that would give us a better idea as to which of these sides was a true contender towards the top end of the league, or whether they were in fact pretenders, and this series delivered on answering this question in emphatic style. Again, Seoul came out with Marvel and Fitz starting ahead of Fisher and Fletter, and they should be commended for really going head to head and even at times bettering the Dallas tank line over the course of this series. But Game 1 of Lijiang and the preceding maps were dominated by the backline of the Dynasty. The partnership of Toby and Jaehong was inspired throughout this match, with Jaehong having a massive impact first, as Seoul convincingly, without much trouble, took map 1, before the pair enabled their frontline to tear Dallas apart on Hanamura and give them a 2-0 lead at halftime. In this first half, Dallas were definitely playing below their usual standards and looked very scrappy and uncoordinated, which was emphasised after they came out rejuvenated after the break to force a very good defensive hold of Eichenwald to stop the Dynasty at the bridge after a much better showing with impact plays from AKM and Note. The momentum now seemed to be completely riding with the Fuel, who started their own attack very well, quickly taking the first point to leave them with over 5 minutes from which to transport the payload to the needed distance. But it was at this point that something strange occurred. Despite the massive amount of time available to them, alongside the numerous occasions where they came into their pushes with ultimate advantages, Seoul kept managing to hold and clutch teamfights with Toby the star as he transformed into Gandalf on the bridge and refused to let any opponent pass, as he totaled 8 environmental kills, an Overwatch League record, with 2 coming in the overtime fight at the end that led to his team extraordinarily holding and thereby locking up the series at 3-0. In fairness to Dallas, they did not fall flat after losing the series and posted an incredibly quick time on Gibraltar in a show of resilience, but again they had the wind taken out of their sails as the Dynasty also completed the map before pushing almost halfway through in overtime. But try as they might, the fuel could not match, with Michelle adding insult to injury with a 3-man bomb to close out the map and give Seoul the 4-0 sweep. While Seoul showed that they are definitely a team to watch out for this stage, but it's probably among those nestling just below the top 2 or 3. Dallas instead raised further questions, with his team unable to really show a sustained level of consistency that makes them a headache to analyse week by week. Day 3 concluded with the still undefeated this stage LA Gladiators playing the Chengdu Hunters, who were having a little bit of a reality check following their loss to the Dragons the week before, and for both sides it felt like a natural continuation and progression from last week. The Gladiators clearly had a plan to deal with the triple DPS comp of the Hunters that they have become so attached to, and by running Sombra Goats, LA had no trouble in completely taking them apart and winning the first map, Busan, with limited Chengdu success coming from backcaps that achieved little in prolonging their eventual defeat. Hanamura saw the Gladiators opt into the bunker and triple DPS comps matchup, but this clearly proved to be a mistake as they were held on point B, which allowed Chengdu, who were clearly more comfortable in this sort of engagement and matchup, ride some momentum to better LA's capture percentage and level the match, with Jinmu again stealing the highlight show with his plays on Doomfist. However, from here on out, on first Eichenwald and then Junkertown, the Gladiators returned to their more familiar team comps and proceeded to destroy Chengdu on both maps, with Decay Sombra completely shutting down the Hunters, with particular focus on Jinmu's Farah and Ameng's Hammond, on Eichenwald as they took a 3-1 lead. They then held their opponent's pirate ship to just before the first checkpoint, before showing how it should be properly run, as LA had little trouble taking their needed progress to win the map, and as such the series 3-1, and push them ever closer to their undefeated stage. As for Chengdu, this series was unfortunately rather predictable in my eyes, as it showed that the teams are now coming into their matches more fully prepared for their predictable tactics, but although still strong when mirrored, are now beginning to be targeted to their detriment, as this series showed, and this issue will probably need to be addressed quickly if they still want to make the stage playoffs. Day 4, in contrast to Day 3, only really had a couple of the matches that realistically had the potential to be close and competitive, so I'll very quickly brush over the other 2, but to no one's surprise saw the Vancouver Titans and San Francisco Shock pick up 4-0 victories over the Boston Uprising and Hangzhou Spark respectively. Both underdogs have been having mixed results that have been quite sloppy heading into these series against clearly the best 2 teams in the league. And to their credit, they both managed to find some success, and despite the overall scorelines, make some maps quite competitive. Paris saw both the Spark and Uprising find some success, whilst causing their opposition some issues, and indeed Boston almost managed to full hold the first point before Vancouver clutched and went on to win the map. I felt that Goushway and Godsby again had nice series for the Spark, but their true opposition to the Shock only really occurred in the first half, as San Francisco turned it up a gear in the second to secure the consecutive map record after another dominating display. Boston on the other hand were like a thorn in the Titans' side for the rest of the map, with RCK Sombra causing some issues on King's Row, but behind Bumper, Vancouver rallied to take the map and secure the series. In fact, it was Gibraltar that almost brought the Uprising a map victory, so completed the map in under 4 minutes after utilising a disgusting Bastion pirate ship comp, and used a similar comp with Torb added on defense that was only beaten after a very clean nanoblade from Hacksaw and Genji, as the Titans also managed to complete the map. As usual though, it was in their second overtime push that Vancouver turned up a gear to pass through 2 checkpoints before then holding Boston to the first, despite their superior time bank, to lock in the 4-0 victory and continue their own record unbeaten streak. One of the 2 series that I thought had the potential to be quite competitive was the Houston Outlaws against the Shanghai Dragons, but again I was wrong, as Shanghai picked up one of the more dominant wins of the weekend. Oasis simply saw the Dragons destroy the Outlaws, with great coordination and a dominant display on the part of Youngjin and Ding, to which Houston had little response, who themselves were very guilty of misusing their ults as their own GOATS comp again looked terrible. In the only close map of the series, Houston firstly held the point A of Anubis on the back of Dante's unstoppable Sombra performance, which included a 6-man EMP to end Shanghai's push, before the Dragons themselves managed to somehow force a tie, with Ding and the subbed in Dia causing havoc on Junkrat and Ash, with the score at only 1-0 heading into the half. After the break though, with Houston being forced to run their 3-3 more often, the competition in the series weakened, with Shanghai's Sombra GOATs finding the most success, as they dominated Blizzard World, to lock up the series before burning enough time off the clock in the early part of Junkertown to prevent the Outlaws from finishing the map, with Gangsu hitting the knockout punch in the final teamfight to give his side the 3-0 win and continue their serious push towards the Stage 2 playoffs, whilst Houston were again punished by their inability to run 3-3, alongside the reluctancy to attempt variants like Sombra GOATs, which have been one of the few comps on which they have found continued success. Week 3 concluded with the other potentially competitive series, as the Atlanta Reign took on the Guangzhou Charge, with Atlanta the firm favourites after their upset win over the New York Excelsior, and especially as they were facing one of the most out-of-form teams in the league in the Charge. Yet surprisingly, it was the Charge who drew first blood on Busan, which has actually been a map they've been really competitive on lately, as they borrowed the Torb, Sombra and Soldier comp from Houston to take a 1-0 lead, with Happy, Hotbar and Eileen showing off their DPS prowess. The next two maps were where this series got a little weird, but very fun to watch. The term defense seemed to be thrown out the window, as first on Hanamura, but then on King's Row, offense ruled the stage, which to the dismay of any viewers wanting to watch Game of Thrones, massively extended the length of this series. With the sides mainly sticking to GOATs and Sombra GOATs, they managed to complete the map time and time again to the amazement of those watching, with the only difference being the near 2 to 3 minute time bank advantage on the side of Atlanta after the first push. This would prove crucial, as on their third push, although the Charge finished the map riding the snowball from A to B, they had no more time left, and when they were matched by Atlanta, this gave them an unchallenged attack to win the map outright, but of course followed the script, with Dako once again the key, like against New York, as they tied the series 1-1. With Hanamura giving us a score of 7-6, King's Row attempted to go one better, with the exact same storyline repeating itself on this map as well. The only difference being that this time, it was a Charge finding themselves with a time bank control, after a very rapid push, headlined by Eileen's Doomfist, who once again dominated its opponents. Pokpo, Dako and Dogman were the crucial pieces in Atlanta's attack, as they completed the map a second time round, before finally getting halted after the choke third time round. Hotba meanwhile was the catalyst for Guangzhou, and it was through his bombs they were first able to complete the map a second time round, before ending the Reign's push on the third attempt. It came down to the Charge's push at the choke, and after pressuring Pokpo, they were finally able to get the kill they needed to win the map 8-7, and again take a lead into the final map. In comparison, Rialto was a much more disappointing map, as the Guangzhou Charge completed the map again on the back of Eileen's Doomfist, before they managed to hold a tired and feeble Atlanta at the first section of Rialto to win the map and hence the series 3-1, as the Charge finally picked up a match win, whilst also leaving us confused as to how Atlanta managed to topple New York just a couple of days before. Looking at my predictions quickly, Day 3 saw me go 4-0, with perfect predictions of the Shanghai and Gladiators victories, whilst I had anticipating that Boston and Dallas would have put up a much better fight and display in their dominant losses to London and Seoul. The final day meanwhile saw me go 3-1, with the first 3 results rather predictable, to take this week to an impressive 14-2 record, which takes my Stage 2 record to 41-7. Funnily enough, the only prediction I got wrong this day was the one involving Atlanta, who were also at fault for my other incorrect prediction. How does a team go from losing to the Valiant, to beating New York, to then losing to the Charge? Beats me. And with that, we reach the end of my Day 3 and 4 review. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'll be back in the next couple of days with my next set of power rankings, but if you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe for this continuing Overwatch League coverage and content.